So what is artificial intelligence for in project controls? Well, to answer that question, we're going to have to go through a story. And it is the story of how technology has evolved since the dawn of humanity. Now, before we start, I need to ask you a question. How is a fishing net and artificial intelligence the same thing? Now, I advise that you pause this video and have at least 2 ideas of these, because it will be enjoyable and we'll end up learning something. So let me get into this. Let's have a look at how technology has evolved since the dawn of humanity. Every single piece of technology that humanity has ever invented can be described via a contrarian question. So I want you to go back and imagine that you and I are building the pyramids in Egypt 5,000 years ago. And I'm saying to you, building this pyramid is a hard thing. I have to remember so much stuff, and I forget it. I've tried to make diagrams in the sand, but the wind blows it away and people walk over it, and I don't quite know how to improve it. And then you say to me, well, what if I could tell you that you could save your thoughts for people for 5,000 years in the future to understand and give instructions to people hundreds of miles away without any misinterpretation? I'd say, well, that's crazy. And you would introduce me to papyrus paper, to paper. Fast forward to the internet. What if we could send and communicate instantly between people and machines across the world? And now to artificial intelligence. What if I didn't have to do all of the thinking? Now we could go even further and say, well, having machines automatically create assets for us, what if we didn't have to construct the walls ourselves? We're getting into robotics there, but you see the point. All of these can be described as a contrarian question that people would have asked before the technology became commonplace. And all of these are progression of automation. So let's dive down deeper into that. What is automation? Well, automation is about scaling the productivity of humanity. With a fishing net, I can catch more fish in an hour than you can with your bare hands. With an engine in a car, I can travel further and with heavier loads than you can on your feet carrying things on your back. With artificial intelligence, I can create more thought work in an hour than you can with a pen or a keyboard. You take a human and you scale the output of that human with technology. And every single piece of technology you have in your home life or your work life does this. So how are these two the same? Well, they scale the productivity of humanity. They scale the productivity of me or you. It's just that they scale it in different ways. A fishing net scales muscle. AI scales mind. In the past, the Industrial Revolution has given us a number of technologies for scaling muscle. We wouldn't think of carrying all the concrete from the concrete factory to a construction site without using a truck. That is standard practice. What if I didn't have to carry the concrete? But we're at the dawn now of having automation of the mind. What if I didn't have to do all the analysis? What if I didn't have to do all the planning? What if I didn't have to write all of the reports? That is the era that we've just entered. Now, what does this do? Well, all technology fundamentally does more things. On one side of a graph, you've got people, and you've got more or less or the same. And on the other side, you've got work. You've got more or less or the same, or better or worse, etc. Now, what technology does is we can take the same people and produce better work. So think here, there's a software program called GitHub, and Microsoft released GitHub Copilot a couple of years ago, where an individual could just say, I want code that does this, and it would draft the first line of code, then a person would go in and check it. That was significantly more productive than people writing it from scratch. We've got the same people, more work, which is the concrete example and the fishing net example. We've got more people, less expertise. This is Uber. Before Uber, to be a taxi driver in London, you had to pass the taxi driver's test. Now, all you have to do is download an app and Google Maps tells you where to go. And we have less people for the same work. This is farming. So if we go back 300 years ago, the vast number of people in the US and UK populations were farmers. Now, it's less than 5%. Every single change just leads to better unit economics. For every pound or dollar we spend, in terms of people's time or technology, we get more pounds or dollars out after the technology than we do before. Which comes down to the fundamental reason of why is this absolutely inevitable in project controls? Because of money. The average salary in the UK, US, and Australia, I've got UK and Australia here. If you can get significantly more work for a slight increase in pay, which you will have because of the increased skill set in planning and controls, you will do that as a company. And because, like in the last video, we're 2.2 million project managers a year down on overall demand, there is more demand than there is supply. So supply can flex to equal demand. That is why artificial intelligence and project controls is absolutely inevitable.